Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Trash Talk. This is the show where me and a guest talk trash. Who's me? I'm DJ Wooldridge. And with me this week, this episode, is Lon. Hey, Lon.
Hey, how's it going? Great to be here.
Lon, for the kids that aren't familiar with you, who are you? Where can they find you? What type of stuff do you work on?
I am an old man who's been writing stuff for the internet for too long, longer than is fashionable. Like I've been writing for YouTube since YouTube.
Yeah.
Worked on podcasts, all kinds of different stuff like that, digital media. Right now, I write Honest Trailers, that long-running show, Screen Junkies / Fandom. I write for a political comedy / commentary show called Some More News.
Yep.
I write some episodes of that. And then, all sorts of other stuff. I write a streaming newsletter about streaming television for a company called Inside. I write columns for a website for creators called Passion Fruit. I do a lot of it.
Well, and I think to your point about you being a longtime writer for online media, is that you are a writer for online media. I'm not sure that's a job that really exists anymore, except if you're already doing it.
It's not. Yeah. It never was a job.
Yeah.
Like I used to get that a lot in the earlier days of YouTube, where a lot of people would be like, "How can I do what you do?" And I'm like,
yeah.
It's never been like I'm going to go on Monster.com.
Yes.
And send people my resume.
Yeah.
I fell backwards into it. I just got a job at a tech company in 2007, right at the dawn of the YouTube and podcasting era. So every time we would experiment with one of these new kinds of media, I would end up being like, "Hey, I'll give it a whirl."
Now, why not?
So I ended up hosting we had a podcast called Mahalo Daily for that company. I worked for a company called Mahalo. The founder of Mahalo is this guy, Jason Calacanis, still pretty well known out there in the world, hosts a podcast called All In right now that's very popular. Anyway, he started this show called Mahalo Daily that was like a daily vlog. We would just make videos every day as part of our website to help promote it. And he hired this CNET personality, Veronica Belmont.
Yeah.
She got tired of this job right away. I don't blame her at all. It was chaotic there. So she got tired and left. And then I kind of just jumped in and took over. And that was really how I got started.
Yeah. So on this show, for people that might be familiar with my podcast, Only Stupid Answers, where we talk about, movies, TV shows, comic books. This is on my personal channel, DJ Talks Trash. And one of the things I've wanted to do with Trash Talk is not only talk with my friends like Lon and other people in industries or in situations that interest me, but I did want to dip my toe into doing going outside of entertainment talk to do possibly politics. And oh my goodness,
you picked such a great time.
Lon, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not think I was going to do an episode discussing the election. We did do back in the day. We did do a couple stuff around 2020 on OSA. Just because how could you not? Right. And I just kind of thought nah, I'm not going to do it this time. And then the election happened, and I'm like, I need to talk about this with Lon. I need to get Lon on the horn, and we need to dive into this.
In an interesting way, I think it is easier to talk about Trump too.
Yeah.
Like Trump won. I know there was all that right after Trump got elected the first time. I feel like people are feeling very nostalgic for this in a weird way now, where there was all that the resistance.
Yeah.
Like everybody who was anti-Trump kind of had this feeling of we're gonna fight this thing. We're gonna get out in the streets. We're mobilizing. Like you were getting invited to a lot of meetings and sign up for this. And we're starting this. There were a lot of people making a lot of plans. And so I think people are nostalgic for that. But there was also this feeling of, I feel like this is not a normal politician doing normal politician things.
Yeah.
But if you say that, most people would argue with you like, no, he's not. He's not really that different. It's all the same, both sides, blah, blah, blah. And so there was all this difficulty in how do we address this. We're all disagreeing about who Donald Trump is and what he represents.
Yeah.
But in 2024.
Yeah.
after this campaign that these guys ran, like, I'm not defending it. It was vile in literally every way.
Yeah.
They're despicable people.
Yes.
But in a way that is refreshing. That it's like, there's no more like, well, what does Donald Trump stand for? Is he going to be a normal president? It's like, no. He stands for enriching himself and grifting and hurting his enemies. And we know who this guy is now, and we can all just talk about it in plain language.
Yeah.
And I do there is something satisfying in that, even with all the horrors that are going on.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's another element of it that changes the discourse in that in 2016, he went through the Electoral College. He did not get the popular vote. We're coming off of Obama. And so there's this sense of like, wait, whoa, this isn't who we are. And now after this one, it's like, you know what? I think this is who we are, actually.
Right. Yeah. Well, there was all that like economic anxiety, right? Like people didn't vote for him because he said all Mexicans are rapists.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. He was just kidding.
Yeah.
People voted for him because, the Obamacare doesn't work the way they want it, or wages haven't increased. Like there were all these excuses. And like people are still trying that. I just don't think it makes any sense at this point. It's like everybody knows who this guy is. He was coming out and saying crazy things every day, horrible things every day, just nonsensical things.
Yeah.
Something about Hannibal Lecter, and if I'm on the boat,
dude,
I'm on the boat with the
shark,
battery, your sharks around, like he's just a lunatic, demented at this point, and people still went for it. Like, well, you got nowhere. He didn't give you anywhere to hide.
Yeah.
If you're a person who wanted to vote for Donald Trump, we all know what's up with you. He didn't give you any cover at all. None.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
And if he didn't, Tony Hinchcliffe didn't, J.D. Vance didn't.
Yeah.
Like, these guys were all right there telling you, like, yeah, I put that bear in my car and I drove it to Central Park, and then I left it there with a bike next to it as a prank and had stakes at Peter Luger. Like, they're just coming out and saying that. You're like, well, all right, if you voted for that guy, you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Here
It is. We're going to get into it
as Attorney General. There you go.
We're going to get into it because as of this recording, this episode is going to go live a little bit after we record it. As of this recording, we're getting a lot of his cabinet picks, and it is a real rogues gallery. It's a real like injustice gang.
It is. I saw somebody, Houston Coley, a YouTuber on Twitter, compared it to the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2. When Mr. is like walking down the hallway and it's like, those are the vulture's wings. Like that's what he's doing right now.
Man. I also think we're probably getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but I also think there's an element to where, and this is, it's depressing to admit this, because there's been a lot of discourse about the way Trump has redefined the Republican Party in his own image. And I think now we have to reckon with, he's redefined what politics is into American politics is in his own image. It is now a reality show. That's what we exist in now.
Did you watch on Netflix, Mr. McMahon, that docu-series about Vince McMahon?
No.
It was the Tiger King guy, Chris Smith, and he made this 6-part, and he made it before the most recent stuff.
Yeah.
So like, Vince McMahon was still running WWE. It was before the human trafficking case. So it's not that fresh, but as a overall, here's who this guy is and his whole career, it's really interesting. And maybe the most interesting and relevant segment, there is a bit of an episode where they talk about Donald Trump being, the battle of the billionaires and all the wrestling storylines that he was in, and his friendship with the McMahon family. And a bunch of people from the wrestling world comment on how direct the connection is between, like, this is where Donald Trump learned how to, like, work a crowd.
Yeah.
This is where he figured out kayfabe and showmanship. And, like, he's just taking those exact same principles and applying them to politics. Excuse me. And I think once you've seen that, once you've realized that's what he's done and that's what all of our politics has become, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So now I see it all the time. Like, there was that Republican convention where, I forget, Ali Ahaba, his attorney, came onto the stage, and they were playing that "All I Do Is Win," no matter what. And she's like dancing. She was almost doing the Ric Flair move. It was like 10% from just the Ric Flair. You remember when Ric Flair used to do that little swagger? She was doing that, and it's like, oh, I get it now.
And
it's both. I think all politics, like I think it's too late. I think we opened Pandora's box on that, and people just expect politics to be wrestling now.
I do. So there is an element that, I don't want to be, old man shouting at kids to get off my lawn, right? Especially since I'm not that old yet. But I do think there is an element worth exploring. I don't know that reality TV or that social media are either inherently evil, right? I have my issues with both. That said, I do think I can't help but look at Trump and be like, yeah, man, reality TV and social media, not just those two, but those two are key components in melting the American psyche. Like we just don't engage. We are incapable of gauging with stuff seriously.
Yeah, I think, there did used to be this idea of the monoculture. There were only so many places to read about what was going on or watch the news. And so there were people on the far right, people on the far left. We've always had a broad diversity of opinion in this country, but it used to be within, like the sort of like we had the gutters in, the bumpers in on the bowling alley. Like you couldn't go too far outside or it got like loopy. Yeah. And there were all these ideas of like, if you were too fringe, like if you were way to the right of what was on like right-wing cable news, you had like some crank newsletter in a basement, you were a crazy guy. And I think what we've seen as legacy media has sort of died, and independent media, and I was just talking about how digital media is my job. So I'm not hating on it. I'm not saying it's bad inherently, but as we lost that, everybody watches or gets their news from the same 3 to 5 sources, whether or not those sources were trustworthy. Yes. I'm leaving that aside. Now you can get your news from fucking anywhere, anyone, anywhere. Maybe they're qualified, maybe they're not. Maybe they're doing original research, maybe they aren't. Like, I think this is the part that keeps getting left out. I keep hearing like, people talk about legacy media is dead and it's being replaced by podcasts, and I think that's great. And it's like, but podcasts aren't doing reporting. Yeah. Podcasts are just reading an article, and then Theo Vaughn is like, that's bullshit. Like that's commentary. That's not reporting. Yeah. And I don't think we have an answer for, well, if we fire all the reporters, like not the pundits, not the Sean Hannitys and the Tucker Carlson.
Not the talking heads, yeah.
If we fire the reporters, like the people who work for newspapers and who call sources and are like, what's
journalistic ethics and stuff like that, yeah.
Those people who are doing the actual work of figuring out what's going on, I don't know what replaces them. And we are firing those people and losing those people every day. Most local newspapers are already gone or consolidated. Big major city newspapers are getting shrinking every year. They're losing more and more people. They used to have every big newspaper used to have international desks, like they had a guy in Paris just talking about what was going on over there. They had a guy in North Africa figure it out, like they had people all over the world. Yeah. And those teams have all shrunk, and now they're all relying on the same 2 or 3 wire services for their international reporting. And so we just know a lot less about what's happening everywhere. And like, that's the part the internet can't just replace. Like, you could start Vice Media again and send correspondents all over the world, but that's expensive and it's hard to make money doing that. It's much easier to be, Tim Pool in a beanie in your room. And I get that I'm saying this in my room.
In your room,
I understand the irony of this coming from me.
And the idea of true. I think in some ways, there are problems with the idea of the monoculture because, there's what was that monoculture? Right. It was mostly heterosexual white men. Yeah, right.
But I get why that is no longer what we want. And I'm not defending that. No, I like that. Like,
but this idea that everything's so atomized, I think the other issue is that it becomes easier for just to pick a name out of the hat, an Elon Musk type or a Mark Zuckerberg type, to grab a hold of the organs of information. Since if we're not going through news outlets, we're going through social media, they can just buy the social media platform, and now they have the control over the discourse.
Right, but it's so multi-level. Like, that is part of it, but it's also just, once everything is just on its own, independent, and we're not all using the same sources, we're not all looking at the same information, we're not all looking at things in the same way. There's no up is not down. Like, you can't communicate with anyone else because we're all operating from different starting premises, and we're all receiving different information, and nobody's there to verify this is true, that's not true. Like, all of these zombie things that we've known for years, and yet people will just deny it to your face. Like, obviously the 2020 election results are a huge one, but there's millions of examples of that. Of just, we think of them as like disagreements, but they're not. One thing is true and one thing is not true. And I really do feel like we're losing that. There's I bring it up all the time. I may have even talked about it on a show that I've done with you.
Yeah, probably.
There's a British filmmaker named Adam Curtis, and he made this movie called Hypernormalization. And this was that's even like 10 years old now, but it is this idea of, we think of propaganda in this very like linear way. Like, there's a propaganda desk, and Putin is coming over to it and saying, here's what I want you to tell people, and they're going, right away, sir. And then he's like, but it's not. Everybody is propagandizing everybody all the time now, and even the people writing propaganda don't know like the truth. It's not like the idea of a shadowy Illuminati cabal that controls the world is like, no, it's hundreds, thousands of individual people with wealth and resources, and they're all doing their own things, and they're all operating against one another. And like, Elon Musk doesn't really know what's going on any more than you do. Like, he might be trying to manipulate you, but that doesn't mean he's like in charge and has all the real information. He's relying on the same dumb nonsense the rest of us are, you know. Like, it's so easy for one person to make something up, and everybody is ready to believe anything that they read now, and won't listen to anybody correcting them. You can insert any idea into the discourse that you want. At this point, there's no bottom.
Well, that gets us to our sponsor for today's episode, Ground News. I'm kidding. We don't have a sponsor. This show's not big enough for that. But let's get into it. So, listen, I know it's not super productive to play the blame game and go back and what could have been done, or, the present is the present. That said, I love to go back and relitigate what could have been done differently. And so let's talk about
so much could have been done better. It's hard. What could have been done worse?
For real. Well, I think so. So real quick, before we kind of look ahead, let's try and do a brief autopsy on how we got where we got, because there was a moment that there seemed to be, a real, like, maybe we could pull this one out, man, because there was the debate between Biden and Trump, and I remember, shit, were you on an episode where we talked about? I don't remember the last time you were on, but I remember I was at the gym. Because I'm not going to watch the debate. I don't care about anything Trump has. I don't care anything about what Biden has to say. If I'm being 100% honest. And I'm at the gym, and I see there's TVs on all the treadmills, and I can look over at one of the TVs on the other treadmill, and without audio, I'm just watching the debate. I'm like, oh, gang, this does not look good. This is not looking great. But then he drops out.
Yeah, then he drops out, which was good. But at that point, we were already so behind. Yeah. And like, I think if there's a public enemy number one for Democrats here, it is Joseph Robinette Biden. And I think honestly, I go back to 2020, the primaries. Whoa, there we go. There he is.
There he is, shaking hands.
There was that moment where Bernie. I mean, if you go back even to 2016. I think there was a moment where Bernie Sanders came out and was unexpectedly connecting with Democrats in those primaries in 2016. And I think very significant to now with what we know in 2024, go back and look at who Bernie was connecting with in 2016. Young men, Latinos, working class and suburban people in places like the upper Midwest and the Rust Belt. Exactly who we lost to Trump in 2024.
Yeah.
Anyway, the centrist Democrats, non-progressives, neo-libs, whatever you want to call them, they did not like that. All united, not only united against Hillary, but viciously attacked those of us in the party who preferred Bernie.
I recall.
Bernie bros.
I recall. Yes.
The epithet. And I was saying, just this past week on Twitter, Elon, like now you can see tweets from people who have blocked you.
Yeah.
There was one, I won't call anybody out by name. There was one very, very prominent lib poster, like not Brooklyn Dad, but one of those guys.
Yeah.
And he has had me blocked since 2016 because I was a Bernie bro.
Yeah.
And he was a Hillary guy.
Yeah.
And I forgot all about him, that he even existed. And then just last week I started seeing his tweets again because libs share him all the time. And he'd had me blocked for so long. He still has me blocked like 8 years later. Okay?
Yeah.
To me, that was the moment. Democrats had this sudden surge of popularity. Young people were like, oh, this is a message I could get behind. This is a guy whose message resonates with me. And Democrats were like, no, that's not what we're about. We're about the Clintons. We're about like the most, like as Republican as you can be while still technically being a Democrat.
That's the interesting thing. That's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about more because the idea that, we've talked about how, I've heard some discussion about how, obviously the Trump election is in some ways a response to Obama, obviously, and his and this idea that Obama represented. We could debate how progressive he was, but the general consensus is that feeling that maybe he represented more progressive, and you see the Republican reaction to that with the nomination of Trump and everything. But I do think there was also a Democrat reaction to that, which is like, okay, listen, gang, we gave you your Obama. Now let's go back to Hillary. Let's.
Even Obama, like his policy, like his rhetoric was very progressive.
Yeah,
but his policies were very much in line with what the Clintons were about.
Yes.
It's always those moderate, middle of the road, blue dog Democrat. They control the party. The rest of us are just along for the ride.
Yeah,
and it became very starkly clear in 2016, and then again in 2020. This was the moment where even I voted Democrat in every election since 2000.
Yeah.
That was the first time I voted in a presidential election was Bush v. Gore in 2000. I voted for Al Gore.
Oof.
I voted for a Democrat every time.
Yeah.
I'm as loyal as they come.
That was a bleak election to start with. That one, I'm glad it didn't sour you on the process.
But 2020 was the first time where I was like, honestly, these guys don't want me anymore. They don't represent me anymore. I don't like Jill Stein either, but they're telling me to get out. You'll remember again, Bernie was doing pretty well. Liz Warren also was doing pretty well in the primaries with a progressive sort of message.
Yeah.
And then they were like, no, we're nominating this extraordinarily old man who is a Republican, but who has a D next to it.
Yes. Yeah. And then that man promised us. He promised. The way I remember it is he promised us, don't worry, gang. I'm a transitional president. 2024 is going to roll around. And it's one of those things that's like, yeah, we should have. I think that's one of the, there's a few key things that I think could have been done differently. And I think one of them is Biden should have never run. We should have primaried him so that theoretically, although, talking, it's like it's the same thing. It would have been Kamala anyway, but it's like
I don't know if Biden had done what he clearly had suggested he was going to do, and just what common sense dictates.
Yeah,
just I'm old as fuck.
Yes,
I can barely stand up. I can't express myself clearly. People don't understand what I mean when I talk.
Yeah.
it's time for me to step aside. Maybe Kamala would have won. I don't know.
Well, I think in the same way that Biden got it or Hillary got it, like the forces would have aligned, you know.
We would have had a chance. But to me, it feels like that was really it. You know, Democrats keep going back to like Biden's record and what about this? Biden did this, and what about this on the economy? But I just feel like they communicated very clearly to their voters that, like, you know, we don't care what you think. Like, we're gonna put together this guy. He doesn't really stand for what most Democrats or a lot of the Democratic base stands for. And then putting all that aside, so okay, we end up with Biden. Biden's obviously too old to run. He's running anyway. It's this huge disaster. Now we've got Kamala with this ticking clock where she didn't primary and she's coming from behind, and you know, people don't really feel like they know her very well. Also, I'm just gonna put it out there. A Black and Asian woman. She's coming at this from behind because we put her at this huge disadvantage. But I still think she had a decent shot again if she had been willing to let people on her left flank know she wasn't going to totally ignore and abandon them.
Totally. I mean, simple thing.
That's what they wanted and needed to hear.
Because there was this surge of excitement when it's like, okay, and not so much for Kamala, but like not Biden. Thank God, because that wasn't going to happen. And so there's been a lot of discussion too about, you know, this people talking about the election, about how this is part of a global trend. Apparently, according to Vox, 2024 was the largest year of elections in global history. More people voted this year than ever before, and across the world, voters told the party in power, regardless of their ideology or history, that it was time to change. And of course, the Vox article suggests that this is probably at the footsteps of inflation and stuff like that. And so Democrats were in power. People are feeling the pinch. I mean, and so they went up against Democrats. But Kamala, that's the frustrating thing is, to your point, she's the unknown quantity of the three people, Biden, Harris, Trump. She's the only one that hasn't been president. So all she had to do was lean into that. Like, listen, I'm Biden's vice president, but maybe I'm not so cool with what's going on in Gaza. Maybe you know what I mean? Just a few things like that.
And when she first came out, it was Tim Walz calling people weird.
Yeah.
It was, I'm going to fix housing. I'm going to make housing more available. It was, I'm going to make groceries more affordable.
Yeah.
It was a few pretty good things right away. Everybody got really excited. And then they did the exact same thing they did in 2016 and 2020. They said, actually, go fuck yourselves. If you're to the left of me at all, if you're not a Republican, if you're not a conservative, you don't count. You don't matter.
We want those Dick Cheney votes. We want the Dick Cheney fans.
Right. They wanted to peel off Republicans. And it's like, Republicans like to vote for Republicans. That's why they're
Republican. Yeah.
And it was, and now we know, now we're seeing the numbers. It was just imaginary. They were imagining there were all of these Liz Cheney conservatives who were sick of Trump, who were sick of the Republican Party, who wanted to embrace, leftism for the first time in their lives. And it's like, I don't know how much time any of them have spent in most of this country, but that's not how most people think or talk when I speak to them. Like when I go visit my mom in Florida, I'm not talking to a lot of people like, who I hate is this Donald Trump.
Yeah,
character.
For real.
Like, they love him.
Well, and that was the interesting thing. This if you're watching the video, these numbers are pulled from G0. So if you look at the turnout in 2020, 81 million people voted Democrat in 2020, 74 million in 2020. And in 2024, it's only a slight bump for Republicans. It goes from 74 million to 75 million, but then Democrats dip from 81 to 71 million. We had this question from the Discord from Leonard Kim. How do we reconcile the fact that there was less voter turnout this election, and that despite an actual good economy, rising prices blinded people in voting Trump? I believe most of America wanted similar things, but vehemently disagreed with the method of achieving it. And I think I could quibble on some of the points there, but I do think to me when this happened, right? And it's like, you look at those numbers, and it's like, to me, this is less of a Trump win and more of the Democrats fumbled the ball. The Democrats, it's less that Trump won and more that the Democrats lost.
I mean, if you look at what the two campaigns did, Trump and Vance. I mean, Trump, what is he? Flails around like a demented old crazy person. But Vance and the rest of the team, dancing to YMCA.
Yes.
But Vance and the rest of the team that still has brains that aren't made of pudding.
Yeah.
They leaned way into the base. They hit the base as hard as they possibly could. They went on every bro podcast. They had Tony Hinchcliffe come do roast jokes at the convention. They let this country's core racist, misogynist, anti-trans, xenophobes know we're your guys.
Yeah.
We are your guys. We are going to institute this cruel system of brutality. We're going to punish people you don't like. We're your guys. And if you look at what Walsh Harris did, they gave the middle finger to their entire base, and they said, we want the other guys to vote for us. We don't care about you.
Yeah. We also want to appeal to the core. What if we were like Republican light? Like, what if was that something? And it's like, what are we doing?
It's not only immoral in a bad way, it just makes you bad people.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work.
Yeah. You didn't win.
Well, they're going to hit you on it anyway. Like the most popular ad that Trump ran this whole cycle, the one they put millions of dollars in the last weeks of the race, was anti-trans nonsense that Kamala didn't even run on. It was some random comment she made on Charlemagne the God's podcast in response to an ACLU survey.
Yeah.
Like, should we give federal prison inmates a gender trade? You know how many times that's happened?
Yeah.
Like a handful. It's not a real political issue.
Yeah.
She never talked about it. She purposefully didn't run on human rights, trans rights, gay rights. She ignored all of those people. So they didn't feel like they had anybody defending them. And then Trump hit her on it anyway, as if she had been out there every day saying, we need drag story time in every American library. Like, she might as well have suggested that.
And that's the thing that you think.
On it anyway.
You wonder how it doesn't penetrate, because you'd think that they would look at like, wow, they're coming after Biden as if he's leading the communist revolution in America. And he's Biden. So it's like, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we should try and do the best thing, because they're going to come at, like, why even pretend?
Eventually you come around to, so it could be brutal incompetence.
Yes.
Or it could just be that Democrats would rather lose than do progressivism, which I think is probably the truth. I think the Democratic Party would rather be the minority party sniping at the Republicans from the sidelines. They prefer that to being in charge, but being expected to do things for poor people, which does not interest them.
Well,
it's a party that's controlled by just a different group of rich people.
Yeah.
And really, when you get right down to it, they want to seem nicer. And it's like, look, I got no personal problem with Mark Cuban. I've met him a few times. He's always been very nice to me.
Yeah.
But Mark Cuban and Elon Musk are different in that Mark Cuban wants people to think he's like a good dude. And Elon Musk doesn't care.
Yeah.
But other than that, are they really that? Are their interests really that misaligned? No.
Yeah.
They're very similar.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what when you're looking at, like Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn guy, like, yeah, he wants to be Democrat because he likes gay people and he doesn't want to seem like a racist xenophobe or whatever. And I'm sure he's not anti-trans or whatever, but he doesn't want to do progressive economic policies. That's taking money from him and giving it to like the unhoused. That's not of interest,
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you get down to, is like, on a certain level, if it's a choice between running Bernie or losing and trying Gavin Newsom in 4 years, I think they go with losing and trying Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think you're right, man. And I just wonder, I think this might be something that we circle back to later in the podcast, because it comes down to later in the episode, because it comes down to where we think things will go. But I do think there is a sense of like, yeah, we would rather let everything burn down than like, improve people's lives. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, universal healthcare.
We talked a little bit about this, but to me, Obamacare was a big like light bulb moment for me, when it was like this decades long Hillary trial. We've been trying for so long, and then we finally get this healthcare plan. It's passed. It's law. I have access to it. I got on Obamacare because at that time I was like a total freelancer and I had no healthcare. And it's the worst healthcare plan imaginable. Yeah. I mean, it is healthcare in name only, but you're still paying impossible about it. It does the very bare minimum to be considered health insurance.
Yeah.
And so it's like you still don't have real health care.
Yeah.
Or if you do, you're going bankrupt trying to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, like, so what are we doing, man? Like, if you literally can't do it, if you can't do it, then why are you even talking about it? Just don't even propose it if it's impossible.
You mentioned earlier, Kamala going on with Charlemagne the God. Could she have won the election merely by going on Joe Rogan's podcast? Do you think?
No, I think that's 90% a just like a thing to say, like it sounds like a cool take.
Yeah.
And like I do, there was actually, I saw some data, I think it was Pew Research did. 30% of Americans say they heard either candidate on any podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody. This is not everybody's like, who's going to be on Call Her Daddy next week? People are not plugged into this shit.
Yeah.
Like, could it have made a difference? I very much think she should have gone on, not if only because Joe Rogan is like a malleable, like he's a doofus. Like he's got that Trump thing of like
whoever talked to him last.
Whoever's sitting across from him is the smartest guy he's ever met.
Yeah.
I've had debates on Twitter with Joe Rogan that like he's conceded to me.
Yeah.
He's a very open-minded guy. I say this in a good way. Like he's an open-minded guy.
Yeah.
So I think, there's no reason Kamala shouldn't have. They were like, oh, but progressives won't like it. Like, I'm a progressive, and I would have fucking loved that.
Yeah.
Absolutely should have gone on.
What?
But I don't think it would have made. I don't think.
No. What I do wonder, what is the deal with us as a nation? Just handing the keys over to guys that like, whoever I talked to last, that's the person. Like, why? What is it up with? What's up with us loving these guys?
I think that's actually a pretty common psychological thing. Like whoever's in your face. A lot of people are like that. They don't have very strong personal beliefs. And so if you're in front of them making a good case, they're like, you know what? This guy makes a lot of sense.
So here's who does listen to people like Joe Rogan, at least according to my social media feeds, are Gen Z men. And I know there was a lot of hand wringing over Gen Z in general, but Gen Z men in particular. This is from The Guardian. As a whole, Kamala Harris won voters between ages 18 and 29 by 6 points, but preliminary exit polling indicates that Donald Trump opened up a 16-point gender gap between young men and young women. 56% of men between ages 18 and 29 voted for Trump, while 40% of their female peers did so. You and I talked a little bit about this when I initially reached out to you to be a part of it. I know there's a lot of concern about what seems to be a right leaning surge with young men. And I was just reading another article this morning that was kind of talking about how there is a kind of a rightward lurch in all of media, like a lot of country stars, which is, the country music tends to be at least embraced more by the more conservative cohort in our country. There was a surge in that this year. Just a lot of stuff, some low budget Christian movies. That Reagan movie made a lot of money, stuff like that. What are your thoughts on Gen Z? They were supposed to save us, Lon.
Always that the next generation, they're gonna grow up and save it. That's always dumb. All these things are always like a pendulum swing. It's never like we're permanently moving in a better direction because of the kids are gonna rescue us. So that's always BS. But I do think any of us who've worked on the internet and in digital media have seen this with our own eyes. There was Gamergate. Yeah. There a lot of cultural analysis and pop culture criticism and discussion has sort of fused in a lot of ways with like right-wing and conservative sort of politics and perspectives. And I mean, if you go on YouTube and you look up movie reviews, there's like a 50-50 chance you're going to get just a guy reviewing the movie or a guy talking about why it's too woke or why it's identity politics or misaligned or whatever. I think part of that is that conservatives just paid a lot more attention and pumped a lot more money into that world than any of their liberal or progressive counterparts. Again, because there are a lot of very rich people with a lot of strong interests in expressing those ideas and spreading those ideas and sharing those ideas.
Yeah.
And there aren't necessarily a lot of very rich progressives.
Yeah,
There are a lot of rich centrist libs, but there aren't a lot of rich progressives who are very interested in spreading and sharing those ideas. So the infrastructure, if you are a young person who wants to make web content from a strong, hard right perspective, there's a lot of opportunity for you out there. There's a lot of money. If you can start to build up any kind of organic audience, you're going to get hit with a lot of different opportunities to get advertising, to get part of a network, to get more access, to get a larger audience. And we've seen some of these right-wing commentator guys are pretty good. Some of them are huge morons. And like they're thriving because there's a lot of money and opportunity for guys doing what Matt Walsh does or what Ben Shapiro does, or you know, like there isn't a similar infrastructure for left-wing commentators. When you do get shows like Some More News, they're Patreon sponsored, or Hassan, you know, like he's relying on his viewers to pay, because there isn't the idea of the George Soros thing that's just bullshit. Everybody knows that, right? George Soros is not cutting checks to liberals to make web content.
If only.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, he's a rich guy. He gives money to progressive causes, but it's not. There isn't that kind of an infrastructure. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
And I do also think that there is just a cultural like fuck you, dad. You know, like there's like every generation sort of swing. Like the boomers were a reaction to the silent generation and their parents who fought World War II. And then they were all these like hippies who were going to smoke pot and drop out and whatever. And then, you know, 80s, you had Alex P. Keaton, and all of a sudden everybody wanted to be like a Reagan conservative, and that was the blowback. And then when I was growing up, it was cool to be, you know, like a hippie again. And we're always just kind of going back and forth. So I do think that's part of it. The whole idea that's very popular culturally of being like a based 16-year-old who like loves fascism and Donald Trump is like, you know, because their moms and dads are millennials, and it's like, fuck you, man. Like, I do think that is part of it. And like, you know, teenagers love to get a rise out of people. And if you say something racist, you get a rise out of people. And like, that's just human psychology. So I think that's part of it too. I guess I'm less worried about that stuff than some other people. I don't think that's what lost us the election. Like, I don't disagree. It's gross and weird. And like the fact that you can't talk about movies without talking about like, why is there a black person in it all the time? Like every time is a bummer. But I do also think if Democrats were like responding to what voters want and addressing real issues that people have in their lives, like how expensive everything is and how hard it is to find any kind of reasonably priced place to live, especially if you're in a major city. And you know, the obvious problem we have with so many people being unhoused or impoverished or hungry, the massive issues we're having with literacy. I don't know if you've been reading about this week. I think if Democrats were making serious proposals to try to actually help with some of that stuff and stop saying the economy's fine, look at this chart.
But you see, the line has gone up, so I don't care that you specifically are hurting.
And Tim Walz, I saw Tim Walz talk about this once, so he knows that this is real. But like, the stock market is not what determines if the economy is good for most people, for some people, not for most people. For most Americans, it's how much do I make? How much does it cost to live where I live? How much does it cost to like eat and buy clothes and like all the things, you know, like that's the economy. How much extra do I have left at the end of the month? Can I support myself from one full-time job? Like, that's the economy. And if people are getting wiped out every time they need a colonoscopy, you know, the economy's not working for people. And I think if Democrats actually addressed that, I think they would. I think they would be doing much better. And I don't think, you know, Gen Z being fixated on why are there black people in my favorite shows, or, you know, oh, that's super based or crypto or any of this. I don't think any of that bullshit would matter.
You know, it's interesting. So we got these question from the Discord from Jake Hafner. Since 2016, it's felt like elections have turned into glorified popularity contests rather than legitimately choosing leaders based on their stances and policies. Do you think America will ever get back to, quote, normal elections, or will it continue to be, quote, go with the guy you like the most rather than the most actually qualified? I think I'd argue that there have always been popularity contests, but I think to your point, because at least in my lifetime, or at least in, I guess, whatever, time has gotten so weird. But in the last, let's say, decade or so, there hasn't been any real movement. There's been movement to harm people, specifically more marginalized people groups, but there hasn't been like real movement to improve or change our country, right? And so I think to your point, I wonder if when you're talking about the Democrats actually speaking to people's needs, maybe our election system has become more performative because we don't really have an expectation that any of these people will do anything anyway.
Right.
Like, not conservative, liberal, whatever. Do they actually do anything? Like, why are we voting for any of these people?
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's one of the like culture war things too, where it's like, Paul, the WWE-ification of all of it is, the stuff that people like to talk about that's entertaining is not doesn't necessarily have anything to do with these people's real jobs. Like that there's that video this week. It's an old thing, but people have been resharing it, where RFK Jr. and he's got like the table full of snacks in front of him, like Captain Crunch, and there's a bottle of like Mountain Dew, and he's like, because he can't talk, he's like, foods are bad for you. We're gonna make America healthy again. We're gonna fix food, and he keeps talking like, we're gonna fix the food system. We're gonna make Americans healthy again. All this stuff is filled with sugar and all that, but it's like, but what are you gonna do? Like, I don't even necessarily disagree that we should make food healthier and like, okay, what are you proposing? But like, what are you gonna? Is he gonna go tell Pepsi what they can put in Captain Crunch? Is he gonna?
Yeah.
They want to start a war with like Mondelez and Nestle, and like, I don't think they give a shit about any of that stuff. Like, I don't act like. It's just talk. It's just like, we're gonna make America healthy again. Like, well, but how? Like, are you gonna ban red dye number 6? Like, what's the
actual policy? Yeah, because at the end of the day, it kind of reminds me a lot of the discourse around policing, where it's like media has taught us policing is this like a nonstop action movie, right? And it's like, it's mostly paperwork. Like, at the end of the day, it's paperwork. And similar to this, it's like, yeah, that's great. All the grandstanding displays, you want to bring up a Dr. Seuss book for whatever reason, awesome. But at the end of the day, you guys need to make actual like policy stuff. Like, it's paperwork. You need to do the paperwork.
Yeah. But it's not, I mean, but at this point, it's really kind of not though. Like, you don't really have to do much. Like, Trump is gonna mostly focus on grifting and golfing. Like, he really isn't gonna do a lot of president stuff.
So what are we doing?
There was just that article too about Elon Musk is just like following him around all day. Like, he doesn't have anything to do either. He's not really running companies.
No.
It's all for show. It's kayfabe. Like, it's character work, like they're making us mark out.
Yeah. So speaking of the RFK of it all, let's get into the future, looking ahead at some of these cabinet picks, what this could mean for us moving forward. RFK is set to lead the HHS. This is from Politico. President-elect Donald Trump will nominate former presidential candidate and anti-vaccine activist, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Yeah. RFK said on X, the Everything app, I look forward to working with more than 80,000 employees at HHS to free the agencies from smothering cloud of corporate capture, so they can pursue their mission to make Americans once again the healthiest people on earth.
Right, like, but that. So they're declaring war on like the American food industry.
Yeah,
Like,
he goes on. He says, "Together we'll clean
I
up
don't
corruption."
believe you.
Yeah.
I don't believe you. Donald Trump loves money.
Yes.
He doesn't
that's
want to fight General Mills. That's not of interest to him.
That's the thing. So he goes on, "Together we'll clean up corruption, stop the revolving door between industry and government, and return our health agencies to the rich tradition of gold standard evidence-based science."
They're going to just gut them. They're
Yeah.
going to just gut the FDA and the USDA, and so there won't be any more Food Safety Administration, and we're all on our own. Just like Listeria breaking out at the Boar's Head factory because we got rid of all those regulations.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. When you
the
look
opposite of what they're saying they're going to do.
When you look at that statement, I think I could have a robust discussion with RFK on what science, evidence-based science looks like. But if I took him at his word, it's like, that doesn't sound awful to me. But even if I believed you, RFK, that is what you want to do, Donald Trump's not going to let you do that shit, man. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, I feel like we're now at this point where, like, people just like it's kind of what I was saying before about hypernormalization. Like, I don't even think Trump voters care if any of that stuff happens.
Yeah,
they just want to brag about it. They just want to pretend that it's true, to like have something to throw at their enemies. You said, but now we're all healthy again. Like, it's like, well, Trump was already president for 4 years. What were the big achievements that you guys are so proud of? Like, what did he do?
There's sections of wall. There's sections of wall.
Like, he didn't do anything. The one thing, Operation Warp Speed, was his one big achievement that they now can't take credit for because they hate vaccines.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he fast-tracked a COVID vaccine that you now think is an attempt to, like, microchip your brain or something. Like, that was his signature policy achievement. What else did he do? It doesn't even matter. They won a rhetorical victory. They don't care. I think a lot of Americans don't think government does anything.
Yeah.
They don't think it helps them. They don't think they need government programs. They think all their tax money just gets thrown away or burned or spent on scientific studies we don't need or something. And they legitimately think like anarchy would be, like, no government would be better. And so they just, it's entertainment. It's kayfabe. It's not real.
Okay, before, I do want to follow up on that, but I do want, real quick, in the chat, you can watch live at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. Leonard Kim says, the party that wants to give more benefits to corporations won't want to fight them off. Yeah, agreed. Let's get into...
Of course.
Yeah.
We've reached the point where, like, General Mills executives are watching him say that, but like, nah.
It's like when you watch...
if food companies wanted to make products healthier, it's an option anytime. They're doing it this way on purpose.
Yes.
And they don't want to change.
100%.
Like, they've already optimized that. This is the cheapest they can make it and the best it can taste and the most addictive it can be already.
Yeah.
So any attempt to mess with that, you're messing with their business.
Yeah, this was an election to get rid of as much regulation as possible. So let's look at to that goal. Let's see some of Trump's cabinet picks. Stop me if you want to pause on any of these people. We got Secretary of... None of these people, these are his picks. They still have to go through the process, but the Republicans control the House and the Senate. So,
well,
we'll
I think
see.
I think an interesting theory here is that some of these picks are purposefully wacky.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Because it's a loyalty to... He's got to see which Republicans are going to do whatever he says and which Republicans are going to be the problem ones that he's going to have to go after.
Yes.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think that the point here may be less about he wants these people for his cabinet, because again, Trump doesn't really care about being president. He has no agenda.
Yeah.
I think it's more like a test for his Republican colleagues.
When you put it that way, that's bleak. So here we go. We got Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Attorney General and alleged sex criminal Matt Gaetz.
Right. I think Matt Gaetz is the one where it's like, because he is notoriously hated by his Republican colleagues. Like, he's not well liked by anyone he works with. Because he's a sexual predator.
Yeah.
Among
allegedly.
That's not even the only odious thing about him.
Yeah.
So that feels in particular, and to be the top law enforcement official in the nation specifically,
it's kind of galling. You're
think
really
that
poking the bear with that one. Yeah.
That's the test. He
Yeah.
wants to see who's going to stand up and be like, all right, this one I can't allow.
Yeah.
Because then that guy has to be purged. I studied the Cold War in college. That was my specialization.
Yeah.
It's very Stalin-y.
Dude.
And I know people are like, oh, he's a fascist and Stalin was a communist, but like authoritarianism is authoritarianism.
Yes.
And like, this is a very Stalin type move. Like test the water with something outrageous, see which 3 guys argue with you, and then those guys are the next to get purged. Like, dude, that's how he would do it.
To that point, I remember, because obviously online and stuff like that, there's a lot of like Trump and his running mate JD Vance said he's America's Hitler. We love to compare him to Hitler because that's the top shelf fascist that we can go to, and it's always like these guys are too. Nazis, a lot of those Nazis fought in World War I. Those were hardened motherfuckers. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them. These guys are too buffoonish. It's too clownish. And then I watched, did you see the movie Death of Stalin?
Yeah.
I watched Death of Stalin and I was like, oh no, it's this. Oh my God, it's this.
That is Trump too.
Yeah.
It's all these guys waiting around for the old man to die because they're afraid of him.
Yep.
But then the moment he's gone, it's this mad rush, this power vacuum they've all got to fill. For sure. That's exactly.
It's bleak. So we got Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who served as
a Fox News guy with, again, a lot of bad allegations. And he's another loyalty test. He's like, this is literally like Trump watched this guy on TV. It was like, I like him.
Yep.
I'm going to make him my executive vice president. Like it's that Mr. Burns thing.
Yeah, we got Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who the lady that killed her dog.
Infamous puppy killer. Puppy. It wasn't even a full-grown dog.
It was a puppy.
Disobedient, because, puppies come out of their mother's womb
fully trained,
ready to go.
Yeah.
They don't ever need correcting. They know exactly what you want from them. That's how nature works.
Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, ambassador.
This one's also crazy. We do have to talk about this.
Yeah, please.
Because again, this has got to be a loyalty test because Tulsi Gabbard is, I don't want to say for sure, like I'm not part of the international espionage community. I don't know what you guys have heard. I am not one of the slow horses. So don't take my word on this. But if you look up Tulsi Gabbard, there's a lot of rumor that she's a Russian asset, like directly, like a direct part of the Russian government working on behalf of Russia from within the United States. She was a big defender of Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad. Like she's got that's one of those things where I feel like putting her in charge of America's intelligence apparatus is one of those like opening of the Mission Impossible movie. Like this destabilizes the entire world. Like I was really thinking about like, what do you suppose the discussions are like in like MI6 and like France's intelligence service and Germany's intelligence service this week? Like, can we not tell Americans things anymore? Because then Russia will know whatever we tell them. And I mean, I don't even understand how that works. Like, I don't understand how Tulsi Gabbard runs like the CIA.
Yeah. That's fun. That's a fun. Well, even without that, I don't know that I'd tell Trump stuff. He's just going to leave those documents on the toilet. Like Walter White with the Walt Whitman book at the, Breaking Bad season 5.
Yeah. Cause this is a whole show unto itself, but like both right-wing and left-wing people have very reasonable concerns about what we'd call like the deep state.
Yeah.
I think Trump fans are wrong about like the FBI is trying to frame our guy, but like, it's not like I think the FBI is like a good organization full of cool people doing awesome things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to even know what to think about that. Like, I mean, maybe on the, like if you put it all together, like disabling America's ability to conduct intelligence with other agencies around the world is good. Like, we'll definitely have fewer like South American coups this way. I guess. But then it's just like, but what actually happened? Like, how does this work? Like, did the NSA just stop telling the director of national intelligence things. They stopped telling the president things. Well, now they're operating completely autonomously. It's like we are creating the IMF.
Yeah. But not the cool one, the lame IMF.
Yeah.
Oh man, we've got Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee.
That one's also he's a lunatic.
Yeah.
Mike Huckabee's like he reminds me of he's like a southern cartoon dog.
Wait, are all these people
not even like a person?
Yeah, I know. Wait, are all these people Fox News people?
Shucks, folks, like it feels like he should be talking to you right before you go off the dip and splash mountain.
Yeah, for real, real.
Look out up there!
We changed the ride.
Like
it's not that.
That there briar patch. Like that's how I imagine Mike Huckabee.
Dude, well, I'm just now. It's just now occurring to me. Like all these people are Fox News fixtures. That's probably how he's aware of any of them.
That's Trump's an old man who sits and watches Fox News all day.
Oh no, Deputy Chief.
Mike Huckabee, I can't picture him. He's in overalls, but one of the straps is undone.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like this one's done, but not this one.
The other one's not only not done, it's missing. You know those ones where it's just missing and it's like folded down.
It broke off. And he's never gotten a new pair.
Yeah.
That was great because that was like even a blast for the past. Like
Mike Huckabee.
Like that's crazy. That's crazy.
Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen.
I can't even be upset. I can't even be upset about that one. That's just crazy.
What about Stephen Miller? How do you feel about Stephen Miller? He's back.
Look, he's back.
He's back, baby.
And then you know.
Yeah, we have to.
He looks like Goebbels. Like physically, like look at Stephen Miller and put him next to. I'm not saying he is. Like I'm not. I'm not even going there. I'm just saying it's odd that he looks like Joseph Goebbels.
Just think about it.
I think that's straight.
Yeah, we're not trying to make any allegations here. Just think about it. Listen,
I'm not comparing them in any way other than they look remarkably physically similar.
What is that? We just asked the questions over here.
We're just throwing these things out.
And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the new Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, that will be run by Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek, thank you. I'm so sorry. Vivek, I don't know that he would correct me, but
he probably would not, because that's rude. That's woke. But it is Vivek.
Vivek Ramaswamy, and of course Elon Musk.
There he is.
There he is, gang. There he is.
Listen. And I have a little bit more of a gut than Elon in this photo, so maybe I'm particularly sensitive to this. But middle-aged guys out there, jumping up and doing this, it's almost never a good look.
It's never flattering.
You have to have, once you're in your 40s, I feel like you have to have a certain level of gut awareness at all times. Like you don't want to be showing that off in the wrong moment, you know,
like in the wrong context.
Like the swimming pool on a Carnival cruise ship, great. Take it off, take the shirt off, go for it. But like at a political rally, when a Getty photographer is going to be taking your picture for like the front page of a newspaper, like you don't want to do that.
No,
it's never flattering.
Yeah, so this one's a little
undergut, 40-year-old undergut. Never. There's no situation in which that's flattering.
It's flattering. You got to watch out for it. This one is a little bit more confusing as to even what they would be accomplishing. When you look at this is what part of Trump's statement. This is from CNN. Together, these two wonderful Americans will pave the way for my administration to dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies. So what it sounds like is that I think it's sometime in 2026, Vivek and Elon will turn in a spreadsheet of like, here's some jobs you can cut, and then Trump either will or won't. But it's just another way to dismantle government.
I mean, I think this is two things. I think one, this is like, get these guys out of my face. I gotta give them. They gave me a lot of money. I gotta give them something.
Yeah.
You know, like this is like how Maggie has her own little steering wheel next to Marge in the car and could pretend that she's driving.
Yes.
I think it's a little bit of that. Because these guys will produce a report and then they'll be like, thanks a lot, fellas. Trash. You know, like he doesn't have to do anything with it. But I also think this is another like PR propaganda just to introduce. Republicans love this idea. And this is not a Trump idea or an Elon idea. John McCain actually ran on this. I don't know if you guys remember. During John McCain's run for president, he was a really big fan of like, you know how much we spend on scientific studies and gerbil biological cycles, and like he used to talk about all this wasteful government. And look, I'm not denying that there's wasteful government.
Yeah,
of course there is. The United States is an unthinkably massive bureaucracy. I'm sure there's tons of wasteful spending that a clever person could genuinely go in. But it's such an old idea. In fact, that movie Dave, you know, that Kevin Kline, Ivan Reitman comedy.
Yeah.
The hook of that movie, like the thing that makes Dave ultimately a successful president, is that he brings his personal accountant, Charles Grodin, to Washington and is like, look at the books and figure out how the government can save all this money. Yeah. So it's that. It's just that. It's just more of that.
Well, I think, Lon, like if we could just run the government like a business.
Yeah,
there's no wasteful statement in business. There's no wasteful spending in businesses, I don't think. So
yeah, I think it's just more of that same Republican messaging of like, Reagan's old line of like the scariest sentence in the English language is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." You know, like that idea that anything the government tries to do, they're going to fuck up, and it's always going to be miserable, and we're always better off with some awesome, perfect, efficiently run private business doing it instead of the government. The weird thing is the examples they always use for this are the DMV and the post office, which are fine.
Yeah, like, I just had to go to the DMV and I scheduled an appointment and it went fine. I will tell you, a lot of the people in line with me around the DMV, there was a lot of characters. There was a lot of characters in the DMV, but the people that ran the actual people that worked at the DMV went smoothly.
The DMV usually fine. The post office almost always fine. Maybe you got to wait in a little bit of a line. It's no different. It's no worse than Starbucks.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I renewed my passport recently, and I realized that I had lost my old Social Security card. You know, like the little paper card. So I went to the Social Security Administration to get a new card, and I was expecting this like Beetlejuice waiting room bureaucratic nightmare. It took literally like 7 minutes. It was like the easy. So even our examples of how the government can't do anything and there are always failures and everything, it's like it's not really true. Republicans just love that idea because it's an excuse to not pay tax.
Exactly. Not pay taxes.
Yeah. Grover Norquist's old line. And again, this is from, I think, the 70s or the 80s when Grover Norquist said this. Is like, I want a government that's small enough that you could drown it in a bathtub. That's cool. That's old school Republicanism. That has nothing. That's not Donald Trump, and Elon Musk. They're just borrowing these ideas from Bob Dole and John McCain and Mitt Romney. And it's the same shit we've been hearing for decades.
So I kind of want to end.
And they never do it. They become president and then they never do it.
They never do it. Yeah, well, okay, so that leads me to my next thing is how worried should we be? Because I do think it's a little bit like we should count Trump out because now it's not that he's more prepared, but the apparatus around him is more prepared than it was in 2016. And also it's not correct to pretend like everything went fine last time. How many Americans died because of COVID?
I don't mean to be flip like that. Like I guess I'm coming off a little flip, but no, I think this is disastrous.
Yeah. So, but that's the question is kind of because I kind of there's part of me, you know, the I guess gallows humor, whatever the gallows humor version of hope is, that the stuff that has been proposed, the stuff that they ran on, the stuff the tariff stuff, all that shit, beyond all the heinous, stuff against trans people and immigrants and stuff like that, would be disastrous. But Trump is an incompetent weirdo who surrounded himself with incompetent weirdos. Like, there's no way that him and Elon Musk and RFK are going to like get along for more than a few months, one imagines. So
Elon's already, he's twice now in just the last week publicly been like, this guy Elon Musk won't leave me alone. I don't know what to do about it. Maybe we're going to get rid of him soon. He keeps following me around. So like Elon's almost done. Like Elon might be gone pre-inauguration.
So like how, trying to look at this soberly, and you and I are not, we're not we can't tell the future. Prognosticators. I think that was the word I was going. There we go. Yeah, I tripped myself up. But it's like trying to like get a gauge on stuff. This is worst case scenario. It is bad. Is there a chance that they trip on their own dick and everything's kind of okay?
Everything's kind of okay. I would not. That's not my prediction. But I do think here's what I think. I mean, in a nutshell, like if Trump is about to do something that is going to massively upend the American status quo in a way that matters to established rich people, I think they will call him on the phone and tell him not to do that, and he will listen to them.
Yeah.
So stuff like, I'm going to get rid of income tax and replace it with ridiculous tariffs, like that would destroy the economy. A lot of rich guys would lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think they would say, we're not going to be behind you. And enough rich guys called Don, he's going to listen to them because they're his people. He's a grifter.
Yeah.
He's out for money. Like, there's enough money out there to convince him not to crash the American economy.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things he would like to do that I think rich white people probably won't care about as much and probably wouldn't pick up the phone and tell him to stop. And I think those are the things that we're in real danger. So
you got some examples off the top of your head.
Rounding people up who you think might be here illegally and deporting them.
Yeah.
Laws, like massive crackdowns on not just trans rights, but things like gay rights, basic human rights for members of minority groups that Trump considers, outsiders. If I were, and look, I'm not saying that I think Muslims were not justified in skipping the vote or voting for someone else. Like, I get why a Muslim American would not want to vote for Kamala. I 100% understand.
Yeah, agreed.
But also, if I were a Muslim American right now, I'd be very concerned because they're a group that I don't think Donald Trump likes particularly. And I think that if he wanted to showboat and show off one week, I don't think he'd have any problem doing something really bad, like along the lines of the Muslim travel ban, but something just as equally horrible.
Yeah.
And, I think that there are international, like I said, I think that this creates an environment where we could be in a lot more military conflicts, or we could be bombing a lot more people, or we could be killing a lot more people. I think that he was pretending to be a dove when he was running, but that's a lie. He's actually very hawkish and loves to use the military. And we can currently see he's got a lot of plans in progress to consolidate the control of the military. Like, he just has that new proposal this week about he wants an independent panel that he controls to be able to fire generals. Mm-hmm. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So I think like he definitely has plans for using the U.S. military against his own people, against, people we don't want to use them against, or even just is there going to be a much wider war in the Middle East because Trump won't say no to Netanyahu, who's a lunatic, genocidal maniac? Yeah. So that's the stuff I'm worried about. The stuff that I don't feel like the president, I don't think they're going to ban corn syrup because the president of Post will get on the phone and be like, Don, you're messing up my portfolio. I'll give you $100,000 not to do this, or I'll give you $2 million not to do this.
Yeah.
But I am worried about the stuff that he would do that there aren't rich people around there who are willing to pay him not to do.
I do think there's an element of, people, the most reductive way of phrasing it is inflation's high. We're voting out the party that's in there. And part of me wonders
I think it's a little bit, I would say it's pandemic plus inflation. Yeah, and I think that's why we've seen the whole world reacting this way.
Yeah.
It's like people can't help but blame the people in charge when things go wrong. Mm-hmm. Even if the things that are going wrong were actually the people who were in charge
before
years ago, or it's a thing like a pandemic that they don't have real control over. I think if you're running the show and something goes wrong, it's a buck stops here situation and you get blamed.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big part.
But I wonder, and I want to think, I wonder if you think this has any legs. When you look at the stuff Trump has proposed, it feels like to me, if he does a fraction of it, it would have such sometimes monetary cost, but also a psychological cost on the nation. Mm-hmm. I see a reality where he doesn't make it the 4 years as president. beyond his age. And I'm like, obviously there's the age thing.
I don't think he survives. I think he's gonna drop dead in a year or two.
I'm not even talking about that dropping dead. I'm thinking about like,
and I'm not saying assassination. I think he's just his heart's gonna give it.
Yeah. Which is, I think, just because of his age is a real possibility. But beyond that,
he doesn't look like a healthy person.
No. But like the fact that like if he makes things material or harder, that much materially harder for the people, that we're like, you know what, man, you don't get to do the full 4. You're out. Do you think something like that could happen?
I mean, no. I think as long as Don's breathing, I think the people who love him because he's an avatar. He's much larger than just a regular guy. He's a symbolic representation of sticking it to the elites or woke liberals or that purple-haired barista you don't like or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think those people aren't going to abandon him no matter what, no matter how bad things get. But I do think it is possible for America to like turn on him more generally.
Yeah.
And we saw it. It happened in 2020. Like his response to COVID was so bad.
Yeah.
It was so embarrassing that finally it shattered it broke the bubble and people decided they didn't like this guy. And I do think that could happen again.
Yeah.
If he like politicians always do things very deliberately and gradually because they don't want to break everything and the whole system collapses. Yeah. And Trump doesn't have that instinct.
Yeah.
So he might break something that really fucks up the country. And I think he only gets so many tries at that before people would respond.
There's concern because of the stuff, everything that he said and the stuff that we've talked about him punishing his enemies and everything that, hey, might not be elections next year or something probably closer to, what is it, Hungary, where it's like there are elections, but there's not really elections, that type of thing. I do have, again, this is maybe me being overly optimistic, is Trump does not strike me as a person that is trying to make the Republicans the dominant party forever. Trump is trying to get money and get out of all the crime stuff he's under. Right. And he is old. So I do think there is a chance that he's like, no, I'm not going to set up things so JD Vance can run the country forever. Right. I did my thing. I'm out. I don't. So there might be a chance in 4 years that we can put this to bed, maybe.
Yeah. I agree. I think he's only ever out for himself. He does not care about the future of the Republican Party. He does not care about conservative ideology. Yeah. He does not really have an agenda. You're exactly right. This is grifting and keeping himself out of jail.
Yeah.
I think we did kind of dodge a bullet in that the biggest concern about Trumpism in terms of like the 20-year view would be if he had a natural successor.
Yeah.
Like obviously JD Vance is pretty widely disliked. It does not have the juice.
Yeah.
And
nobody seems to have the juice.
Ivanka, I feel like, would have been the prime example, but she wanted out. She didn't want it. Don Jr. too busy doing a lot of drugs. Like I don't even feel the need to say allegedly. Like you watch videos of that guy and it's just like,
yeah.
I've been around people on those drugs. I recognize what it looks like to be on those drugs.
Yeah.
I believe that man is on those drugs.
Yeah.
Eric, a doofus, he's the one that they dumped all the Trump organization crimes onto. Yeah. So now he's got this record. Barron's not old enough. I just don't think if there was like if he had a son who was like well positioned, I think we could be in real trouble of like a dynastic.
Yeah.
He's just going to pass the reins to the kid. But there is no Kendall waiting in the wings. There's just a bunch of Connors, and I think that's good news. That's good news.
Yeah, I think you're right. That Trump is so narcissistic. He's so narcissistic. He couldn't even invest enough in his own children to make one competent enough to replace him.
I think when he dies, it's very much like a death of Stalin. Like a Khrushchev will rise eventually to take his place, but they're not going to have the magnetism, the cult of personality. Like they're not going to be the new Rajneesh, there's just no chance. I don't see that happening.
So you mentioned a couple times, you talked about, the way the pendulum, things going back and forth and stuff like that. And with that in mind, it's like, are we as a country, and you and I are not necessarily the best equipped to diagnose this, but we're the ones talking, so here we go. Can we never escape the gravitational pull of this? You know, there's the phrase of like, what is it? The arc of justice is long, or whatever. The arc of history is long, but it turns towards
justice.
Yeah, whatever. And I, you know,
I don't think that's true.
But so it's one of those like, are we as are we ever going to get better? Can we get better? Are we capable of that? Could Trump be so bad that it's like the Great Depression, where it's like, oh, actually, let's pass some things that actually do benefit people.
I mean, we're getting pretty existential at this.
That's
point.
where I like to live, man.
I mean, could things get marginally better?
Yeah.
You know, could we fix some problems? Could we move forward in some ways? Sure, of course, but like on a long enough term scale, you know, I think we're doing what we can. Humanity is living with today and understanding that all of this could blow up tomorrow. Like, I don't think we're ever on a linear path towards like a better utopian tomorrow. Like, I like the Megalopolis, but I think Caesar Catalina's an idiot. Like, I don't think that's. Did you see Megalopolis?
No, I did not.
That's not going to make sense, but when you see it, you'll get it.
I'll get it. All right.
But I think this utopian idea that one day we could have like a perfectly functioning Star Trek society where everybody's going to be like altruistic and there's no money, and you know, like we resolve conflicts peacefully, and like maybe one day. I don't think that's what people are.
I just want
like, we're animals, man. I think we're.
I just want my son to have a future where he has like healthcare, man. Like he has
universal
healthcare.
I think every new generation starts out with opportunities, just like every past generation. That doesn't mean, again, like things can't get within your narrow view of your lifetime and your environment and the world you're in. Things can absolutely get better.
Yeah.
But on a moving the species forward global humanity scale, like,
well, I guess that's my
civilizations come and go, man. You know, like, I don't know.
My hope.
The Romans really thought they were on to something, and it all falls.
Yeah. I hear you, and I think there's some historical evidence beyond you threw out the Romans, but I think there's other historical elements to back up
there's tons
what
of
you're
these
saying.
Societies where it seems like like the Nazis thought they were going to be in charge for 1,000 years.
Yeah,
you know?
but I do hope. I guess the darkest before the dawn situation. I hope this can break the fever. I hope that like all these people are like, yeah, he's our guy. And then once again, it's like we got back with our toxic ex. And it's like, oh, this is why we broke up with you. And but maybe, I don't know. Like maybe something will break through with the Democrats, or maybe we'll introduce ranked choice voting. And so it's not just a two-party system. Maybe.
You know how long like humans like us like evolved to roughly our level of natural selection have been on this planet.
Yeah,
we're talking hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah,
maybe even like many hundreds of thousands of years. And all of recorded history is like 3,000, like 4,000 if you want to go way, way far back. So like we're talking about unthinkable numbers of generations.
Yeah.
Like lineages lasting millennia, going back into history, and they had their own history and religion and narratives and stories and conflicts. They were falling in love and doing whatever the hunter-gatherer version of getting married was, and divorced, and they were having wars, and like we just don't know about it because they hadn't figured out writing things down yet.
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, when you think about it on that scale, we're just doing the same thing. We know how to write it down now. So now it's a narrative.
Well,
and that tricks us into thinking it's a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, but it's not.
Well, listen, maybe our AI overlords will fix it all for us. But Lon, before we go, remind the kids at home where they can find you, what you're up to.
Wow, I always used to just do Twitter on these things. I was always like, find me on Twitter at LONS, and you still can. I'm still there. I am also LONS on X.com, presented by Elon. I am also on Blue Sky, LONS over there too. Look me up, Lon Harris. I'm on both of those. And, you can find honest trailers and some more news. They're both on YouTube.
Check both those out. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash, every place that matters, which does include Blue Sky. If you're watching this, you're over my personal channel. Appreciate you. If you want to watch this live, ad-free, if you want to check out Patreon exclusive content like Mutant Academy or what we're into, you can do that over at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. You can check out my podcast network at Only Stupid Answers. So give all that stuff a listen. I'm doing a new show on this channel with Sal, where we're going through the Superman movies leading up to James Gunn's new Superman reboot coming in 2025. So check all that stuff out. Lon, thank you for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
And let me know in the comments, do you want more political talk? What are you thinking about trash talk? What are some other guests I should have on the show? Let me know, and we'll see y'all next time.